Okay, so today I'm just going to talk about randomness and why it's actually a very weird concept. So, when we think of random, let's say like throwing a dice, for example. So when I roll a dice, now I got a 6, and I can get anywhere from 1 to 6, right? So the possibilities are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Um, and it could be the random object could be a coin, and it could be a 6-sided dice, an 8-sided dice. It doesn't really matter what it is, right? But when we think of random, we think of anything that's basically that we don't see any obvious pattern, right? But the weird part about randomness is that randomness actually has rules. So, like with the dice, for example, with the 6-sided dice, we can get anywhere from 1 to 6, but we can never get right? We can never get 7, right? No matter how many times I roll this, I'm never going to get a 7. And so, even though we think of the dice as random, there's a rule, right? There's like a constraint to it, right? We can never get a 7, right? We can never get an 11, right? It's always going to be between 1 to 6. And so the weird part about randomness is that randomness actually has like specific rules, at least mathematically speaking, right? And when we talk about randomness, like in the real world, it gets even more of randomness becomes a very vague concept. It becomes almost randomness doesn't seem to actually be a real concept in nature. So that's like the weird part about randomness. Randomness actually has rules, right? Because if you have true randomness, like completely random, like there's no rules whatsoever, there would be nothing, right? If you could get every possibility, there's basically no possibility. It's kind of like that. It's a very weird concept, right? It's when we have rules, right? So we can only get between 1 and 6, right? It's when we have those rules in place that we can actually have randomness, or what we define as randomness.